What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Art of War. We have an exciting video for you today as we are going to rank every single datasheet in the brand new Leagues of Votann Codex. And this is an exciting one because a lot of things changed to the game, and for Votann themselves, it's a completely new game for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wow, it's such a cool book, man. We played a couple of games with it, and all of the units have like some kind of thing that they do. They have some job. The detachments are super deep. Love what they did with this book.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best codexes that they've designed, period, and I'm really excited to keep playing some of the different styles and testing out and continuing to test many of these new units. Now, if you are joining us, please do give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know what you think about the Leagues of Votann Codex, which units you're enjoying, which ones that you might not have found value for, and we'd be happy to kind of read those comments and interact with the community down in the comments. Now, the other thing is for Leagues of Votann, there's a lot of battle reports in the Worm right now at theworm.vhx.tv. There's a 3-day free trial, and in addition to accessing the Leagues of Votann videos, you also get access to our Discord community, which has a Leagues of Votann channel. It's popping off. There's tons of comments, tons of new list ideas in there, so it's a great time to kind of learn and gather all that knowledge for the new book. And very soon, I will be doing a Leagues of Votann group coaching, so keep your eyes peeled for that on the artofwar40k.com. Where you can find out more information about those group coachings.
All right, let's jump right in. Starting off with Uthar the Destined.
Uthar the Destined. We're going to follow the order of the codex, so if you do have it, you can just pull it open, and we're going to go through all those data sheets in that order. And with Uthar himself, previously, he was never seen.
No, he was pretty bad.
I didn't even have him painted. Now, I have him painted. He's been in every single game, and he has been an absolute hero. The additional command points, almost every detachment has vital stratagems that you want to be using all the time. And his ability to reduce stratagem cost for nearby units within 12 inches is vital. I think it's absolutely essential. I think he's straight up auto pick now. Doesn't matter that he does extra combat damage. He can flip dice. All that's a bonus. The CP alone is worth the cost.
Absolutely. I mean, that ability you see in a broad variety of armies being taken. You basically see it in like every army where it's a thing, right? One of the biggest reasons why I like taking, my Demon Prince in World Eaters is because he is that 12-inch free strat, or it's a huge part of why you take him. And he's 200 points, and Uthar is 95. Now, you're not getting a Demon Prince out of it, right? You essentially get it on a budget because you don't have to spend for being toughness 10 with 10 wounds or whatever, or a bunch of combat. But you get some combat, you get some defense, and you still get that 12-inch aura, and it's really good.
Absolutely. I think that rule alone just sends him straight into auto take. I've never been disappointed in him since I've been playing him with the new book, and if you haven't tried him out, highly recommend. Next up, we have Buri Aegnirssen, our new named character. He is a lone op with stealth. He can stand back up on a 2-up when he dies the first time. He has a Blood Surge move if your opponent decides to shoot him. He's a D6+2 Blood Surge potentially into something. That's the closest eligible. He's a pretty unique character. We previously didn't have access to lone ops in Votann, so this is a rule that is very new for us. I have played him. I do think he hits very hard. He's got 5 attacks, strength 12, AP 3 damage. He's a sweep profile if you need it. What I have found is that he's relatively slow with that 5-inch move. And in the meta right now, almost every army has grenades, tank shock, all these different ways to do mortal wounds, and he has no defense against this. I've found that he goes down pretty easily. And because he doesn't have rerolls, he'll kill a couple models, but he's not really doing more than that. He's not taking down something vital, I've found.
And he's only OC1, so he's never going to defend an objective, right? He's not going to go in, something like the Sanguinor, right, is going to kill whatever unit tags him. But Buri almost certainly won't, right? He has 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, no rerolls, wounding on 2s, no rerolls. So in there, you're going to roll a 1, or they're going to roll a save, and suddenly he's tied up with 1 scout that's contesting his objective. So that means that if you want to actually hold the objective, something else needs to be on there, and then your opponent just interacts with that instead.
And just ignores him.
So
I found he's either ignorable or he's too slow to get into the game to force the opponent to have to interact with him. And, 110 points isn't insane. I don't think he's like dramatically overcosted or anything like that. But he's probably a little bit too expensive compared to some of the other things that we have access to in this army. So for me personally, and I could be wrong on this, I think he fits more in a solid choice. He's okay. He's a solid unit if you want to run him. He provides a really interesting role that's different from everything else. but I don't feel he's vital. The other second thing I would add to that is Votann in each detachment has some pretty good enhancements, and you want generic characters to hold them. If you run Uthar and Buri, you're struggling to have enough generic characters to fit some of those enhancements, so I found that to be a little complex as well.
It's already 205 for just the two of them. So solid choice he does.
Now we have the Kahl, and the Kahl was our classic captain character. He still gives the lethal hits to the unit that he's leading. That's either going to be Warriors or Hearthguard. And in addition to that, he, instead of getting you judgment tokens when he looks at something, instead of his unit kills a thing, you're going to be able to get heal points after. It's a pretty niche rule, frankly. He's very limited by the units he can join. If he could join Steeljacks or something like that, I start getting a lot more excited. But he can't, and so he has a very limited role in the army. He is a generic character, so he can have enhancements, but I personally haven't been running Hearthguard, and we'll talk about that data sheet in a little bit. I haven't found him fitting into my list. I just don't see what he's supposed to provide. If I don't run Hearthguard, there's not really a purpose for him.
Honestly, he feels kind of useless, right? Like, so even if you do take 5 Hearthguard, and Hearthguard aren't the best data sheet. We'll talk about that later. Even if you take them, I don't think you take the Kahl. He doesn't like do anything, right?
No.
He gives you lethal hits. Sure. How many points is he?
He's 70 points.
70 points to get lethal hits? I don't want a 205 point, Hearthguard unit that gains lethal hits. I'd want 135.1. And getting 1 yield point for killing an enemy unit is, I'm sorry, that just ain't economy for me, man. You're going to get like 4 every turn, plus 1 for just having the Memnyr. Having him have to sacrifice himself to go out and kill something, that's just such a low value. Like, the problem is his rules don't do anything, and you still have to pay for him.
Yeah, I think if you're going to probably play something like the Hearthband Grotmist detachment that does buff Hearthguard and gives them 6-inch deep strike and lets them get into tricky areas, you could think about running a 10-man Hearthguard unit in that point, and then the lethals become a bit more valuable. Then you're probably killing more things.
It's still pretty non-bow with the Devwind gun, right?
Yeah. You're definitely running Plasma now. Plasma was much upgraded, and Vulcanite did get extra range, but it's just not that great. You really relied on the reroll wounds out of Landforts previously. So I think, honestly, he's probably a niche pick.
I don't think so. You think he makes out Ancestors Disgrace? He doesn't do anything, man.
He really doesn't, to be fair. And the other thing is he gives you a Rampart Crest. So, speaking of not doing anything, he has a Rampart Crest, right?
Yeah.
So when he's leading a unit, he gives them access to 5-up invuln.
Okay.
On Hearthguard.
Yeah, or
Warriors that
have a 5-up invuln. You're going to let that man escape Ancestors Disgrace?
The one thing, though, is if he is leading a unit of Hearthguard, he can give them Deep Strike, but you can just take that crest on the Hezir instead in the Hearthguard. All right, you convinced me. He's a friggin' disgrace. I'm sorry.
He does not have a reason to join a unit. This is a problem with some characters.
Yeah.
A character isn't free to take, right? It's not like every unit comes with a character attached. You need to actually provide value for your unit, because otherwise the unit's just 205 points. And a unit 135 is much better than a unit 205 if they're basically the same unit. And he doesn't do anything for his attached unit, and so you're basically just never going to take him.
Yeah. If this was an army that had crit 5s, 4 rerolls to hit, okay, we can start thinking about the lethals there, but we're not doing that.
And he doesn't do very much damage on his own, right?
No, he has either a pistol or he has a bolter weapon, which there's a funny enhancement to make it 4 damage, but it doesn't even recover. And then there's a Vulcanite weapon. It's and then his combat is either 3 attacks or I think 4 on the axe. It's very mediocre. It's unfortunate because the Kahl is my best painted model by far. He is the Jim Raynor face that you've seen. And I just cannot get to use this guy. Why?
Yeah, they made this guy real bad.
He's not good. Next up, we have the Grimnyr. So this is another generic character. He can only lead warriors, basic troops.
Bit of a problem.
That is a problem. However, what he does give them is 5 of Phenopane, and he himself has 2 Corvs. His unit has a 4-up invuln. So you have 2 Knucklehead Corvs in there that are 4-up invuln. The whole unit's 5-up invuln, and then they have 5 of Phenopane. Potentially -1 to wound and fortify takeover. And then he has a decent psychic gun, hits on 2s, 6 attacks at strength 6, AP 2, and D3 damage.
That's not a bad gun.
He shoots quite solid. You get reroll 1s to hit from being in the unit as well. And he can hold enhancements for the unit as well. You really don't need to be buffing warriors, to be quite frank, but I do think there is probably going to be a build that is very infantry-based, really relying on that -1 to wound. And in that build, you might actually take, an extra 10-man or 2 10-mans of warriors, and this guy helps make them significantly more annoying to deal with.
You just plop them on an objective while a bunch of other stuff is happening. Your opponent's like, well, I can't target the warriors because I'm, there's a bunch of Beserks or a bunch of Steeljacks or whatever, right? Thunderkyn, that are all shooting and charging me.
Yep.
So I can't go after the warriors. But if they don't go after the warriors, you're just going to get 15s every turn.
And just going to get points. The other thing that he does is once per battle, he can unbattle shock something within 12, which can result in scoring swings or being able to use a strat on something.
That's neat. It feels more like the unit buffs him than he buffs the unit, to be quite honest with you. Where are you feeling for this guy? He's still not, great.
I think he's pretty niche.
Yeah, I would say so.
I think he's better than the Kahl, but not by, a ton. So I would put him in niche pick. I don't think we're going to see him too many times, but in that infantry build, you might think about running him.
He's not particularly efficient, but at least he does something, which the Kahl kind of just doesn't do.
He shoots better than the Kahl. He doesn't do combat better, but he synergizes with the unit that runs him.
He basically does combat better than the right. It's very similar.
He's got a bonk stick.
Both of them don't do anything. Cool. Moving on.
You know who doesn't not do anything?
He does stuff? Okay.
Who does stuff? It's the Memnyr Strategist. It's the little robot man.
Yeah, that little robot guy.
So this guy's a little robot.
He's got the donks up, all right? He's cheap.
He's a leader for the Ironkin units, and that is fantastic because those units are great. But it's really not that he needs to be a leader. He's a 45-point character, so he's our cheapest one by far, which means he is a fantastic caddy for the enhancements that don't require you to be leading a unit. So Dead Reckoning in the Need Guard detachment to get additional tokens, and then or yield points, and then you have something like the Delve Work Navigator in the Delve Assault detachment. In addition to that, he also, if he's leading the Ironkin units, he can give them a free Overwatch or Heroic Intervention. I personally haven't been utilizing this, but you could if you wanted to, depending off if it's the shooting or combat unit. What I have been using, though, is at the end of one of your command phases, he can either gain you a yield point or he can remove one. So it means in detachments that don't get as many yield points as the Need Guard one, you can actually get to Fortify Takeover much quicker.
Yes.
And guaranteed. And then if you are running something that actually wants to be in hostile takeover, potentially the Delve Shift detachment, you can actually spend some to, I was sitting at my 7. I'm actually at 6 before I decide.
Yep.
And you can definitely play around with that. So he helps your yield point economy. But really, I found him to be an excellent, just stand on my home objective, be a screen, and take some sort of enhancement.
He's going to do 5 yield points over the course of the game, holds an enhancement, and takes up space, and he's cheap. Cheap as shit.
He is super cheap. So I have personally put him in every single list, and I've never been disappointed in him. Yeah. He's been absolutely fantastic. And because he can lead the Steeljacks, there's a couple enhancements that help elevate them significantly, and he can be a caddy for those.
Legitimately, I think there's also room where if you have 6 gun Steeljacks, he joins them, he touches your home objective, the rest of them just sit there and just shoot and Overwatch every single turn.
Yeah, there's an absolute threat. Or you just rapid ingress them down and you're like, cool, here's a free heroic or here's a free Overwatch. And I'm just going to ruin your plan to take my objective. Yeah. So there's cool things. I think I've always found him as the caddy sitting on my home objective. But if I ran a second one, I probably would join him to a unit. Next up, we have the Arkanyst Evaluator. He is brand new here. And he is going to be another lone op for the army. If he is nearby a friendly infantry unit who's not a lone op, so you can't string out lone ops to lone ops, you can't do any of that trickery. So the main reason that you're going to take this guy is for his gun. If he is in half range at 12 inches away, he's going to have 6 shots at strength 8, AP 3, 3 damage on his super overcharged profile, and he can get sustained 1, or one of these models when you activate can get sustained 1 in that turn, or you could be in the transport detachment to try and get it. And that's a pretty nasty gun. I'm not going to lie though, I have been personally finding it difficult to fit him into lists. He is 75 points, so he's competing with actual full units of things. He's very close to, he's the same points as a Kapricus Carrier. He's 5 more points than the Defender. He then is only 15 points cheaper than 10 Jaegers. I've personally found it hard to justify because Votann, for me, haven't struggled to kill things in front of me. I've killed the things in front of me. So am I really utilizing him? At 24-inch range, he's just not doing very much damage. At 12-inch range, he'll kill some 3-wound infantry. But is that really worth this? Because I have other options for killing that.
Yeah, I think the 12-inch move what, 6?
Move 5.
Move 5 and then shoot at 12. 17 inches is just too short of an effective threat range. 24 inches, as you said, would be grand, right? But unfortunately,
then I really use my own up.
Yeah. So I think the fact that he really only turns on when your opponent gets really close to you, and that's just not an issue for this army. Not an issue for most armies. This army really is, what it needs the most is to like reach out and hit stuff.
Yeah, we have a real limited range bracket.
So yeah, he definitely feels a little more, what, you think in niche?
Yeah, I think he's niche. I don't think he's as bad as the Kahl here. You can definitely get value. I think in the transport detachment, the Brandfast Oathband, when you drop him out near a transport, you can have a unit behind a wall or off of a terrain feature, lone-opping him, and then he'll get sus without having to use his ability. And then if you have like 3 of them there in a battery, you can just blow up a flank and then be difficult to interact with. There's some cases where you could run that. I think ultimately it's probably pretty niche.
Yeah.
Is what I found. I've struggled to add him into lists.
The transport's giving him a little extra mobility is neat. I think outside of that, he's a little too slow, a little too close range.
Yep. And then we have another character here. He is going to be the Iron-Master. Now, the Iron-Master used to give his unit +1 to hit, and he can join the Brokhyr Thunderkyn units. Now, instead, he gives reroll 1s to wound, which is quite nice. There's some variety of good profiles in the Thunderkyn units. In addition to that, he can heal up vehicles that are nearby. He has a couple of ECOGs with him, so if he joins a Thunderkyn unit, the Thunderkyn unit has effectively 4 random ablative wounds in there as you take damage on the ECOGs. So he's a little bit tricky there. He has an okay gun. His unit's okay in combat, nothing special. He's 75 points.
75? That's a little much.
The main reason to think about running him is the ablative wounds for your Thunderkyn unit, and also he gives access to a enhancement for that unit if you want to run it. And there's a couple good ones like access to +1 to wound, although the first half of that one, if you don't spend the yield points, is only reroll 1s to wound, which is exactly his rule. So he can be a lone up if he's within 3 of a vehicle and not attached as well. So he's something that could hold your backfield against indirect fire.
Is his gun like good at all? Is it like okay?
It's an anti-vehicle gun with 3 shots, but it's short range. It's not really reaching out and touching things. So I think he's okay. He used to be the auto take character because he'd be the generic enhancement caddy, and he'd sit on your backfield, be a 5-body screen, and he would heal up your land forts. And that probably still works in the transport detachment, but I think there's better option. I think the Memnyr Strategist does what he does, but better. And I also think that you start running out of spots to fill characters because you have so many units in the 70 to 100 point range. It's hard to justify running too many characters.
Yeah.
And just think about it. Am I going to run this guy in a 6-man Thunderkyn unit, or am I just going to find 5 extra points to grab 3 more Thunderkyn in a different unit?
Yeah, and also he doesn't really make the unit 75 points better, is the problem.
Real 1's wound is nice, but it's not, wow.
It's not the same as the Kahl, where the Kahl like actually kind of doesn't do anything. It's just he makes the unit probably like 50 points better and costs 75. And at that point, yeah, you're just going to take more dudes.
Yeah. The ECOG thing is very interesting, the ablative wounds for 6-man. They don't have an invuln, unlike the Corvs. But it's 4 things. You know, if you have a 6-man Beamer unit in your kind of at a distant flank, and you have the 4 ECOGs in there, that actually requires quite a bit of effort to chew through, especially with -1 to wound on the unit.
Yeah, it would. It kind of sucks you make them double blast at that point because you go from 6 to 10.
That's true.
That does kind of suck, but ultimately it probably makes it more durable than it doesn't.
I think overall he's probably a little bit better than the Grimnyr and the Arkanyst, because in the transport detachment, he's legitimately useful as a lone op and for healing up the vehicles. But I think as a leader, he's probably not going to be seen too many times because 6-man Thunderkyn aren't something that you could always run, and you don't want to make them too expensive. So now we move into Thunderkyn themselves. I've mentioned this unit a couple times. It went from, in my opinion, a very inconsistent, mediocre unit to one of the most vital units in this army because it strips cover. And Votann are an army with a lot of AP1 weapons and a decent amount of AP2 weapons. And without stripping cover, you might as well just pull a point of AP off of those weapons and say you're going to do significantly less and do a lot of...
They're already at AP1 on a lot of their guns. They can't really spare that point of AP.
They cannot spare it. So you need to ignore cover to do damage with land forts, with, you know, the heavy Vulcanite weapons, with all the autocannons and bolt cannons in the army. And that's a lot of volume. And if you're not ignoring cover, it's going to do significantly less into the vast majority of targets. You have to have it. And I find 3 units of Thunderkyn are basically the first thing I put into every list alongside Uthar.
Yeah, and their guns got much better, right? They went from damage 2 to damage 3 on the anti-vehicle monster one. Instead of wounding on 2s, it wounds on 3s. On balance, that's better. But the biggest thing is that they went to 24 inches and not 18 inches. It was 18 at D6 shots. Now it's 24 at 3 shots. Again, the unit now hits harder because it's flat 3 damage instead of flat 2. And it shoots further. And on a unit that only moves 5 inches, shooting at 24-inch range versus 18 is night and day. 24-inch range with a 5-inch move means you're actually shooting relevant targets basically every turn. And 18-inch range with a 5-inch move is you're not. You're not. So yes, they went down from 3 wounds to 2, but there's some things that compensate for that. 1, mass 2 damage shooting is not really that prevalent in the meta right now.
It's a lot of flat 3.
There's a lot of flat 3, there's a lot of 1, right? Splitting the difference at 2, a little tougher. In addition, if you have a lot of models, and I'm going to say this a bunch, right? But I think one of the strongest things this codex does is spam out toughness 5, yes, but mostly toughness 6 with units with -1 to wound against strength greater than your toughness for fortified takeover. That is very tough to kill in quantity, right? First unit you can get done. Second unit, much tougher. And while your opponent is dealing with other things in their face, like Steeljacks or Beserks or Warriors or what have you, right? Do they really have time to deal with the Thunderkyn? And I would argue that they don't, especially because, as I said, there's not a lot of stuff that's actually that efficient into the unit. T6 with a 3-up is still very tough with -1 to wound, very, very tough. And so yes, they went down to 2 wounds. Honestly, that's probably for the best. Just from a meta perspective, these things at 3 wounds apiece would be incredibly durable and would probably have to be priced to the point where you couldn't just take them as cheap 3-man turn-off cover units, right? They'd be priced at like 100 points instead of 80. And so I think they're a lot more durable than meets the eye, because I think your opponent just won't have really the bandwidth to shoot them. And even the stuff that would shoot them, there's not like a lot of flat damage 2 flying around right now, and it's just not that efficient. So you can take these in 6-mans as well.
Yeah, one of their biggest weaknesses previously was the ability to screen them out. Now you can come in off a board edge, or you could rapid them in and then move 5, 24-inch range. It's very hard to screen them out now. It takes very long-range guns to do that, and at that point, they're in your opponent's backfield. Who cares? We don't need to interact with them. But anything that goes into the middle of the table, it's much harder to screen Thunderkyn, and that's, now they always get value, and they need to, because they also need to be stripping cover.
Yeah, I mean, we just played a game where you had 3 3-mans, and I think that list, the list with the Delve Assault group, could really stand to take like 18 of these things.
Definitely could.
Because you just shot me with these 3-mans, and we're doing like 12 damage to my vehicles. It was like crazy. Because they stand on an objective once you're in Fortify Takeover, so they're all hitting on 3s, they're all wounding on 3s at AP2 damage 3. That's gnarly.
L4 saves, you're done.
Yep, it's an average of 8 saves, right? You average of 8 saves. On average, that kills a vehicle in cover. And if it's a big vehicle, then the second squad will kill it because it has ignores cover now.
Yep. And I think the single strongest damage activation that you get out of this unit is the Beamer unit, the conversion Beamer unit. And that one is best in Needguard. And then you could also play it in Brandfast as well, where it can get sustained 2. So what it is 2 shots each. They have lethal hits if the opponent is more than 12 inches away, or critical hits, and they have lethal natively. Then you throw Sus 2 on there. Every 4-up to hit automatically wounds, and then it's 2 additional shots from the Sus. And in that detachment Needguard, you can reroll 1s that hit, 1s to wound as well. That unit actually pumps out a lot of damage, and you can shoot the 3-man first, pull cover, and then it's AP2 ignores cover, just flat 3 damage, ton of damage.
That is really scary, actually.
It has been scary. In the Needguard games I played, that unit has ripped up basically everything it shot at. So I felt generally very good about the mix. You can run 3-mans, you can run 6-mans. This unit is amazing. Straight up auto take, 3 units in every list, 100%. Next up, we have the Hearthkyn Warriors, the humble battle line unit for the army. They got a lot of different changes that we went through in the Codex, but their abilities, they're still okay at shooting. They'll still chip away wounds at things. It's a high OC unit, stickies objectives. The unfortunate part for the unit is that the Sagitaur is less essential to the army, as we'll get to when we discuss it. So splitting up warriors, I don't think will be the mainstay of the army as much anymore, where it previously was.
Being forced to take them in 10 mans rather than 5 mans kind is not what you want.
Kind of gets pricey pretty quickly. I think one unit is very good. You know, stick your home, move out onto a different objective, protect your expansion objective. It's a relatively durable unit now between the Invuln and the Feel No Pain natively, and then you also can have, additional -1 to wound from Fortified Takeover. So I still have been running one in my list, and I've liked having a lot of OC, especially to heroic onto my expansion objective or to protect Uthar against indirect fire. So I personally have found them to be quite solid. There is very likely an infantry build that runs many more of them, but I think right now where I'm at with the list, I just like having one unit. It's a nice safety net if I play against Tyranids or something with battle shocks. I still have sticky objectives. But it's always taken more damage than my opponent wants to commit into this 10-man, and it protects Uthar for most of the game.
You know what's a really, really good comparison to this unit? Storm Guardians.
Yep.
Storm Guardians also do negative damage. They have 2 Meltaguns, I guess. They have 2 Flamers, I guess. But what they have is an ability to be -1 to hit. Yours is -1 to wound. Yours are high toughness. They all have a 5-up invuln, right? And it keeps a critical character, Eldrad, or in this case Uthar, safe, and stickies the home, and screens out, and is just a lot of bodies at OC2 with a 5-up invuln, right? It's a very comparable unit. And I like, even in busted-ass Eldar, I still like having a unit of those Storm Guardians to screen out, to sticky, and to be an OC bomb late game and protect my character. And I think it's exactly the same here.
Yeah, I felt very comfortable with running one, and I think it's a tournament staple.
I would agree, 100%.
I think spamming them will be a little bit rare, but certainly having one unit is still very nice for this army. Next up, we have the brand new Steeljacks. It has Jack in the name.
It does. I'm automatically a fan. And then I looked at their data sheet and I was definitely a fan.
So these guys are our new elite infantry unit. They are priced to move. They are quite durable. Their damage output depends on what targets they're going into. And there's 2 different profiles. There's a combat version, and then there's a shooting version with the heavy Vulcanites. So the shooting version, its main deal is that it can overwatch on 4s if you're in Fortified Takeover. Otherwise, it overwatches on 5s. For a 6-man unit, it's 36 shots. It's train 6, AP 1/1 damage. And one thing I didn't point out about Thunderkyn is they strip cover until your next shooting phase. So it will work on Overwatch, which means AP1 Overwatch with dev wounds, ignoring that cover. That can add up pretty quickly.
Adds up really fast because they hit on 4s. So they're going to be, 36 shots, 18 hits. 36 shots, 18 hits. At 6/1/1 dev, that's really nasty. Like it's an Overwatch where I actually want to have the Memnyr in there, theoretically, just because you're going to be using it every single turn.
And then on top of that, if the opponent has their unit on an objective, you can use the crest to potentially get critical wounds being precision. So you could snipe out their character. Let's say, for instance, somebody's trying to charge onto your expansion objective, and they get to the objective because they want to make this charge. Okay, if I've rapid ingress this unit down, now I Overwatch, they're on the objective. And if I'm looking at that character, I'm just going to blow them up. Just kill the character, remove that resource from the game. And overall, I think I played them a couple times. Their damage output has been relatively inconsistent. It's a lot of 1 damage shots. The meta isn't really suited for this. There's not tons of infantry spam like bodies besides GSC really. So their damage output has been not amazing, the shooting version. But what I have found is that their durability has been amazing. And I've used them as the mid-game thing, the first durable thing out onto the table to get my opponent to start committing real units.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that widens my eyes about both this and the melee version, the absolute most, is the points cost. The points cost is actually just cracked. Like 30 points a model, forget what they do in combat and shooting. They do enough that is not a thing your opponent can forget. But let's forget that they do anything in shooting and combat. They are 30 points for a toughness 6 model with a 2-up save and 3 wounds. That is dumb. Like, that is a dumb stat line. And the fact that they are cheap and spammable, because you can take 3 units of shooting and up to 3 units of combat, right?
Yep. Separate data sheets.
They're 2 separate data sheets. It means that you can get really oppressively durable very, very fast. Your opponent can put down 1 unit of these, but the second unit, they probably can't. And you have multiple if you really want to, and they will add up, right? Especially if they just shoot an Overwatch into targets all day long. They'll add up very quickly. And so will the melee version when we get there.
They have been, like, each time I've usually dedicated both to 2 separate flanks, and my opponent has left some amount of models alive in both units.
Yep.
Pretty consistently.
I played against them, and I had no incentive to go after them.
Fortified Takeover is so good on them.
T6 -1 to wound with a 2-up save in cover is 3 wounds at 30 points a model. I cannot emphasize enough how just brutally durable that is.
And Needguard, in particular, has access to Void Armor as well to make them even more annoying to kill.
So remember how I said I think the best thing that Votann do is toughness 6 spam -1 to wound? I think that's the strongest thing they have, and the poster child for that is going to be both variants of Steeljacks. And I think you take some split of the two, because I think they're both good.
Yep.
Right? The ones with the heavy Vulcanites, they help deal with your horde problem if you have one. At range. You just spray shots every single turn on Overwatch as well. And if you have 2 units of these, 3 units of these, your opponent's infantry are all gone at like light speed. And they're very tough and they take objectives. So I'm a huge fan of both variants. Where are you thinking on these?
I think the Vulcanite will be tournament staple, in particular in the Brandfast and the Needguard detachments. Even if it's just 1 unit, I really like the threat of, I'm going to use Rapid Ingress on them, and then I'm going to Overwatch on 4s. And potentially Uthar will make make that free, the free Overwatch, or you have the Memnyr Strategist there. And that play can just shut down so many different contest plays or tricky things where your opponent has to move in a weird way to not get the crits on them. I've found that unit vital for forcing my opponent to move in weird ways. So I really like that unit. I think the shooting ones are tournament staple. Combat ones, if we look at them, they hit on 3s in combat with their plasma swords, and then there's 6 attacks, sustained, Strength 6, AP2, 1 damage. They can be up to AP4 in the Needguard detachment.
Also hit on 2s almost all the time.
They're going to be on objective hitting on 2s for sure. And all of a sudden, that unit rips a lot of stuff just straight to death. Yeah, straight to death. It's super efficient by itself. It's a great heroic intervention threat because of how durable it is. And it's going to smack people in combat.
36 attacks, on average 36 hits, because it hits on 2s with sustained. So it's an average of 36 hits. It's strength 6, AP2 damage 1 base. You can make that AP4, at which point, good luck with that. And that's the number of attacks to where they can start punching up into vehicles and similar things like that. I'm a huge fan of these guys as well. And again, 30 points a model for that ridiculous defensive stat line.
What I have found is that Votann, if we think about the older style, Votann is not one of the fastest armies in the game. They need ways to reach out and touch your opponent's objectives, to either deny points, kill units, whatnot. If we look at the different options for that, we have cheap units like Jaegers or Warriors that can go out and just contest the objective but don't do much damage. Then we have things that potentially can do some damage. Beserks, the Steeljacks, and depending on if you kind of tool up some of your Hearthguard, potentially you can do some amount of damage there. But theoretically, these guys are a really good option because they're a lot more durable back in return, and they force an overcommitment to interact with this play. And they do it for not that many more points than some of the other resources. So I don't think they're going to punch up into the most durable units like Beserks can, especially in the Delve Shift detachment. But they're really good at being that durable thing that clears a trash unit or a medium-sized unit and then forces something real to come back and interact with it.
I mean, even something real they probably don't die to, right? Like,
potentially.
I don't even know if they die to like a squad of Sword Brethren, right? Like a squad of Sword Brethren swinging at AP3, it probably gets them, gets like 5 guys and leaves the 6th one alive. Like, they're so tough. And it's a weird kind of like stacking durability where the first unit your opponent struggles to deal with and then probably does. But the second unit that has the same defensive profile, they probably don't. And so if you have 4 or 5 of these units, even 6, right? 6 is 1080. That's not crazy, man. They're not killing that. Your opponent just isn't killing that. I'm sorry. So you just get a ton of ground, and you still have like 1,000 more points of your army to play with.
They're an excellent rapid ingress threat, either defensively to protect an objective and threaten to heroic into it, or they are really good rapid ingress into an area where they can go attack your opponent's objective. And now they can also be carried by a land force. If you are running land force, you can disembark them and go charge from there. So unlike a lot of things that can rapid ingress, if your opponent preemptively puts damage that can look at that firing lane or that area where you can rapid into, these guys are really durable, and they might just tank there, especially in Need Guard, just void armor them, and your opponent's like, oh, I killed like a model, and now I'm going to get shot back as well as charged on my objective anyway. Great. So I think the combat ones are actually better, personally, from what I've seen in playing the games with them.
They actually pull stuff top to bottom, whereas the gun versions don't. They'll do consistent damage turn over turn, including your opponents, but they don't just drop a unit. And the melee version does.
If we're talking about garbage units, 100% the Vulcanite will drop them, but then the combat one will doubly so drop them. Yes. And you want to be on objective. You want to get out on their objectives. I think having a combat unit's pretty essential, and I think the Steeljacks fill that one here.
Sweet.
Then we have the Einhyr Champion. So he also suffered the toughness decrease that Hearthguard did from 6 to 5. And he didn't gain too much. He gained +1 AP on both his weapons. He was AP2. He's AP3 now on both the 6 attack Darkstar Axe and on the Concussion Hammer. But, and then his rule changed as well. He used to be reroll charges, which was fine. And now he is +1 to advance in charges. So you can get an 8-inch charge out of reserves and reroll it with a CP if you wanted to. So you can help Hearthguard in that way, which is the unit that he can lead. He still has his charge mortals. He went up 10 points, so he went from 60 to 70. I personally don't think he needed that, in my opinion. It's tough, honestly, because him plus the Hearthguard is more expensive than 6 Steeljacks.
By a decent amount.
By a decent amount. You don't get... So Steeljacks are either shooting or combat, so you pick which one you want, whereas Hearthguard can have some shooting, some combat. I still think the Steeljacks are a bit better. They're a bit more... the T6 really does matter a lot. Unfortunately, Hearthguard lost the toughness. I don't know why they're in the heaviest armor based in the lore, so why they lost it, I don't understand. But I think the Einhyr Champion, if you're not running Hearthguard, he's just not a solo character. I had run solo characters in the index days sometimes for just a bunch of mortals, but he went up 10 points, so that whole package goes up 30. And there's just better things to use instead. We have so many more options because of the new data sheets. That role isn't needed anymore.
The reason T6 over T5 matters actually quite a lot is because anything over strength 10, we're getting out of the territory of anything that has any amount of quantity of shots. Mm-hmm. As soon as you're over strength 10, you're firing with like 2 to 4 shots, right? And so that means you're just going to be super inefficient to these profiles anyway. Whereas at strength 10, there are actually a wide variety of units that have
disgusting units,
just a lot of shots at strength 10. And something like a Forge Fiend, for example, right? Or a Bloat Drone, for example, shooting you at strength 10 is going to wound you on 3s, and it's still efficient. And there's a lot of guns that are like that, or a lot of melee weapons that are like that. Whereas as soon as you go above strength 10, you will become dramatically less efficient into these 3-wound toughness 6 bodies. And so that means if you're shooting with strength 10, right, a Forge Fiend does not want to wound these dudes on 4s. It absolutely doesn't. It would really like to wound them on 3s. And the difference there is pretty stark. Same thing with like the Bloat Drone if you're not in contagion range, for example. So the T6 matters quite a bit against like strength 10. It also matters a lot against strength 6, right? Stuff like that. Strength 5. Strength 5 is a huge one, right? It wounds these guys on 4s, but it wounds everything else on 5s. Might need not apply, right? So going down to T5 actually really sucks for these guys.
There's a couple places where you could use the champion in the Dev Assault Shift detachment. There's an enhancement for if you use yield points, +2 damage if you use 2 of them, which means his sweep profile would be 6 attacks at strength 6, AP3, 4 damage, which is actually pretty neat. And then he has the charge mortals on top of that, or the big swing would be D6 +3 damage on 3 attacks. So there's probably some uses for him. If you are running Hearthband and running the Hearthguard, he definitely has a use there. You know, he actually really helps the combat prowess of that unit significantly. Whereas if you don't have him, that unit's really not killing much in combat. So I think he's a niche pick ultimately.
Again, the difference between him and the Kahl is the Kahl doesn't do anything. Like the Kahl does nothing. At least the Einhyr Champion does something.
8-inch charges out of reserves is pretty impactful for that army because you can go 6 inches away, blow up a screen, and then the following turn open up 8-inch charges into like an objective or backfield or something like that. Then we get to Hearthguard themselves. So the Vulcanite is basically dead in my opinion.
What did they change?
They gave it +6 inch range, which sounds great.
That is great.
But what happened was they no longer can pop out of a land fort. If the land fort hits the target, reroll wounds. That ability disappeared. So there is no reroll wounds for them, and which means a bunch of 0 AP, 1 damage shots that have dev wounds, you're going to get a couple devs each time, and that's just not very much of anything. In addition, their blast weapon, which was quite valuable against some of the hordes that exist, their GSC, for instance, use 20 neophytes. Oh, they want to go back into reserve if you don't finish off the unit. You were like 5 Hearthguard, you're just dead. Just pick it up. It's not, you're gone. It's not existing. Their blast weapon went to D3 shots instead of D6 and went from strength 4 to strength 3.
Oh, geez. I forgot about that.
So
that is
no longer just like killing a Necron Warrior unit or killing, all these you could still potentially kill the neophytes, but it's very unlikely that you're going to get the whole unit in one go without ignoring cover.
And because if you shoot them together, it ignores cover, they just disappear.
Exactly.
So you can't do that.
So unfortunately, I'm not the biggest fan of Hearthguard. They lost that toughness, as we mentioned. Now, their plasma is okay. It's going to be 2 shots in 12-inch range, otherwise 1 shot at 24. It has strength 7, AP 3, and then 2 damage. And then these are one of the units that has BS 3, so it'll hit on 2s against an objective, or if you're on an objective. So you can get a decent amount of plasma shots into something. They reroll 1s to hit against the closest eligible target. So they'll hit on 2s, reroll 1s. They're pretty self-contained datasheet. But I look at their combat, there's still 2 attacks on the main weapon. They'll hit on 2s, they'll reroll the 1s. Yeah. They only get the reroll 1s in combat if they're in the Hearthband detachment, not from their rule, because it's ranged.
Not going to be in the Hearthband detachment. Just shortcutting that for you.
They went down a bit in points. They're only 135 for 5. It's still a 2-up save unit. You can put a lot of 2-up save T5, T6 units on the table, but their damage output compared to something like the Steeljacks isn't there.
They're kind of ignorable, which is, it's the worst thing to be in a wide front stat check. The worst thing to be is ignorable, because what you want to do with your opponent, right, is you want to hand them 9 units. Say you can kill 1, maybe 2, and then they're all going to do a bunch of stuff back. But the moment your opponent's target priority gets to say, those 3 units won't do anything, I get to ignore them, their life gets like infinitely easier. It's the reason basically why like big knights, when you take big knights, you get to take like the one all melee guy, maybe that fights first, but realistically all knights need a gun. Because if you stat check your opponent with a bunch of knights, and then your opponent can just walk away from the one that has melee and say, that one's not going to hurt me this turn.
Yep.
Life gets really bad because essentially they get to blank and kill that one for that turn, right? It's still alive technically, but they get to spread it out over time. And it's the exact same way with this. If you take 3 units of Hearthguard, man, your opponent just ignores them, and then they don't do anything. And maybe over a couple turns they'll do something, but that's not what the issue is. The issue is you want 9 or so units your opponent has to deal with right now. And if you can't present that, well, they're just not helping out the gameplay, and take something that does. And it's not like you're running out of units that can do that. We've talked about 3 so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So they are competing with other things for their role. Their role that they do isn't particularly amazing. In the Hearthband detachment, there are some cool things that you can do. If you put the champion side, that unit can actually punch up and do a decent amount of damage. Ultimately, I think they kind of fall significantly from where they were. Which was already not like top of the meta. They really needed either extra attacks in combat, or they should have kept T6 and went to 3 wounds. Personally, I think they should be quite durable.
I mean, even T5 3 wounds, right? Because they are tiny little guys.
They're tiny little guys,
right? I could see them being T5 while all the other stuff is T6 because they are much smaller.
But they're the same toughness as a warrior unit.
They're in
the heaviest armor.
Or they need to do more damage, man.
Yeah.
If the plasmas were like 2 shots rapid fire 1, or if their melee got all +1 attack, it's like, sure, then that makes a lot of sense. But unfortunately, they commit the cardinal sin of not doing anything.
Yeah, I frankly think there's a lot more purpose in the Einhyr Champion as an enhancement caddy in certain detachments, and just charge mortals are very useful, and it's a decent thing by itself. Hearthguard, on the other hand, are not that decent. I think they're actually Ancestors' Disgrace. I don't really see a reason to run them. You can run them in Hearthband, but frankly, there's better detachments.
Yeah, there's no role that they do better than anything else, right? If you want a tough unit, you have tougher units for cheaper. Like, for 3 points per model more, you take a Steeljack. That's crazy. It's tougher, much. It hits harder. What are we doing? Or why would you take that unit? If you want something cheaper than a Steeljack unit, well, you're not going to them. You're going to something else, right? You're going to Beserks, or you're going to Warriors or something. There's no role for these guys, unfortunately. And they're so cool.
They're so cool. They're my favorite. They were my favorite models. Sorry, Steeljacks are taking over. As Games Workshop intended.
Yeah, well, Steeljack's also double cheeked up on a Sunday night. Like, it's crazy.
I still love my Hearthguard, and hopefully something will be done, because they really should be filling the elite bodyguard role that they are supposed to, and they just don't in this book. They're trying to do a lot of different things, and they do none of them well. And that's typically a unit that doesn't really exist in 40K.
Yeah, an elite unit like that, that's supposed to be this bodyguard, thick of the fray sort of unit, really just needs to do damage. And realistically, make them more expensive. Make them 35 points a model. Give them +1 shot, give them +1 attack, give them +1 wound. And now these dudes get in there, and they're tough, and they're grindy, and they do a bunch.
And they're worth it.
And they're worth it. And that's awesome. Elite infantry should feel like it. It shouldn't feel like, well, they're the cheaper option.
Yeah, that's
not even cheap enough to make it worth it. And if dropping points, I think at some point you can take too many of them. But
that's going to be
not going to make them
exciting. It's a long while away.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next up we have Cthonian Beserks, the shirtless angry men, and they received quite a few changes, significant ones. They used to be 2 wounds, and you'd have 3 wound, 2 3-wound guys in a 10-man unit. All that's gone. They're all 1 wound now. They went from T5 to T6, so they're tougher than Hearthguard. And then they went from a 6-up save down to a 5-up save, so nice improvement there. They went from 5 of Venopain to 4 of Venopain. So they're pretty tanky against 1-damage weapons, but still against multi-damage, it's very swingy whether they survive or not. They benefit a lot from the -1 to wound if strength is greater. They're another big beneficiary of that. And then their weapons change significantly. So their big concussion maul, that was the hammer that you would always take, went from strength 9 down to strength 5, but it gained anti-vehicle monster 3+, like the graviton weapon. And that's pretty good. Those hammers absolutely slam into knights. We used to wound big targets with the +1 to wound on 4s, which sometimes could swing down. But wounding on 3s is a lot better in the Delve Shift Assault or Delve Assault Shift. You can actually get reroll wounds on them, in which case they absolutely rip down big targets quite easily. The Plasma Axe is strength 7, AP2, flat 3. It's quite good into elite infantry units. There's a lot of 3-wound bodies out there. And then if we go ahead and we look at the Twin Concussion maul, this is the weapon that has 4 attacks, is strength 9 and twin linked, but it's only 2 damage. But it adds that extra consistency factor to help finish off some extra wounds. So I think this is one of the best balanced profiles between the 3. There's reasons to run all 3 of them, is what I've found. And their datasheet rule became a lot worse. It used to be if you hit the opponent with indirect fire on a 4-up, they were -2 to move, advance, and charges, which if you got those off into a melee army, it was completely devastating. Check out the game I played against Space Wolves like a month ago. Ludicrous. Lyco's army could not move with his Terminators. Now it's a -1 to hit. There's suppress, or it turns off Overwatch, excuse me.
It turns off Overwatch in the shooting phase is like the worst timing to do that.
That's a bad rule.
You know, if I'm going to Overwatch you and I know you can turn off Overwatch in the shooting phase, I'm just going to shoot you in the movement phase and you won't be able to turn it off. So yes, unfortunately the datasheet rule got a lot worse. Now I will say,
but there
didn't roll that 4-up, then it sucked. Because you don't have the ability to like pre-measure and know whether or not you've hit the 4-up, slow them down before you place your models. So you have to place them and then go, I hope I hit the 4.
I was 100% in that game.
I believe that you were, Richard. I believe.
I wasn't missing. But their other rule is the most impactful one, and that is 4-up fight on death. It means Votann have a good tool into fight first, into units that are going to heroic into you and try and stop things. You can at least just beat some amount of that to death. You get charged and you're trying to defend an objective, you can just kill them and protect the unit behind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting use cases.
4-up Fight on Death also is very swingy. Not that... It's fine. It's fine to have. It's not that great, though.
It's solid on a 10, man.
But
on Fortified Takeover.
Fortified Takeover, it's on a 3-up. And Fight on Death on a 3-up rips. Dude, it's so good.
Especially with all the attacks they have.
Yeah, and if your opponent charges them and you're in Fortified Takeover, first off, very hard to kill. There is like actually... These guys might have gotten better between the Codex and now.
We were talking about side grade in the Codex. Having played them, I think that even though they're the same points, I really like the upgraded profiles that we're seeing. I really like Anti-Monster 3+, and I like the Plasma Axes as well. So I've been feeling pretty good about them overall. I think maybe they're slightly more expensive than they should be, but I felt really good. In particular, the detachment designed around them, the Delve Assault Shift, is absolutely fantastic and elevates them to an entirely different dimension. And in that detachment, they are outstanding.
Yes.
Our best combat unit by far.
Here's the deal with this unit, right? So it gained a point of movement, which for a melee unit is massive. It's essentially +1 to charge, if you think about it. So that's massive. They went from toughness 5 to toughness 6. And with the access to -1 to wound, there's like no weapon that's efficient into them, especially since their 6-up armor went to a 5-up. There's like nothing that's efficient into them. If you fire bolters into them, you're going to wound on like 5s. They're going to get a 4-up armor save into a 4-up feel no pain. And then you can just heal the unit back in the Delve Assault Shift. So like that's not efficient into them. What 1 damage shooting is going to remotely impact this unit, right? At best, it wounds on 4s. At best, the damage 1 wounds on 4s. Most of the time, it's going to wound on 5s. And then if you're firing anything else, it's like, okay, what are you firing damage 3 into them? Well, if you're firing damage 3, man, I'm -1 to wound. Pull back behind a wall, heal the unit back, right? Because the Delve Navigator is a crazy enhancement. So there's like nothing that's efficient into these guys. Absolutely nothing in the game is efficient at just killing them. Legitimately, the last game we played might have been the most efficient I'm ever going to be into them, with the Sword Brethren with +1 to wound, full rerolls to hit, and lethal 5s. That might be the most efficient unit in the game into them. It might be the only efficient unit in the game into them, because everything else is like, well, I wound on 4s, and, you know, you have an armor save, and you have, you know, to scam on a little bit on, right? And then you have the Feel No Pains, which even damage 2 or 3, damage 2 will bounce off that a quarter of the time, which is enough to mean there's going to be some guys left. Nothing's really efficient into them. And then like the unit just like fights on death, cracks the unit that charged it. And then if you're in Delve Assault Shift, which if you're running a lot of these guys, you should be, you just heal the unit back. These guys are great. Like they're so stealthily good that I'm kind of just super impressed with how the datasheet was designed.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely excellent. I think the detachment is probably going to if you're playing the Delve Assault Shift, it's auto take. 100%. You're going to take advantage of Battle Line, the deep strike that they get.
Pick like 6 units.
Advantage. It's awesome there. I think in the other detachments, if we're looking broadly at the army as a whole, I think it'll be tournament staple, because I still think these guys are relatively cheap trade resources, and they're still not that easy to kill. And having a fight on death unit is pretty useful for a variety of scenarios. I think they're a really nice support piece.
In the Need Guard, you can make them AP4, and that's the point where that unit rips.
Yep.
Right? Hit on 3s, wound on 3s, AP4 is just, okay, nasty.
I really like them overall. I think if you play the combat detachment, 100%, it's just straight up auto take. I think in most of the detachments, having 1 or 2 of these units still is just very valuable for the army as a whole. You need to be able to reach out and touch things, and them and Steeljacks are the main 2.
Yep, and I think, again, toughness 6 spam, man. Toughness 6 out the wazoo, -1 to wound, good armor saves, or good feel no pain. Just enough to make it inefficient, right? Like a Forge Fiend shooting these guys, right? 10 of these dudes. Let's run the numbers. A Forge Fiend shooting at 10 of these dudes is 15 shots. 4 rerolls to hit is like 12 hits. Then you wound on 4s, which is 6, and like 1 of those gets blanked to the Feel No Pains. So a Forge Fiend shoots at them and kills 5. Dude, that's just not enough. That is just not enough.
No, you better over dedicate to do so, and that's a great unit to have.
If I put 2 Forge Fiend to shoot them, realistically, the second one you're going to pull out a line of sight of or something, and even then, the second one doesn't kill them. There's 5 left. The second one doesn't get that because the first one got double blast and killed 5. So like, wow, okay, I put 2 Forge Fiends in. You still have 2 guys left. Delve Assault Shift, back up to 8, charge and kill the Forge Fiends. And that's a unit that theoretically hates Forge Fiends.
The -1 to wound is really huge on these infantry, and it's really, really massive once you actually play with the army. Next up, we have the old Cthonian Earthshakers. This is the new artillery piece. We went through it in the Codex review. It is T6 at 6 wounds. You get 2 models for 110 points. They're OC2, they're infantry, so they benefit from -1 to wound. Their indirect weapons are relatively short range, and their ballistic skill 5+. It's not that easy to do a bunch of damage. They'll kill cultists and stuff like that. And then their debuffs are not particularly impactful. They can force battle shock tests. Okay, whatever. Really, they're here for bodies. And because they can go in transports, you can potentially yeet them out into an area and be annoying with them. They have some plasma attacks that don't really matter. These are just relatively cheap T6 bodies is effectively what they're. Because 6 wounds apiece is 12 wounds in the 2 guys. It's not nothing to chew through.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
their indirect is not, luckily it's not oppressive.
Their damage is just not why you're taking them, if you take them.
They're there for bodies, and that can be -1 to wound. Does that put them in Ancestor's Grace or Niche Pick?
Ancestor's, Disgrace?
Disgrace, yeah.
How much are you going to be taking these guys as toughness 6 bodies? I know you can, but 110 is a lot.
110 is not cheap. In the dev detachment, they can do some amount of things. There's a stratagem to support them. It really is, if you run out of Steeljacks to run, you run out of Beserks to run.
You run out of Thunderkyn, you run out of Warriors, man, you have to dig pretty deep. What are we running, a 3,000 point list here? I feel more inclined legitimately to take the Hearthguard than these guys.
They're 25 points more for 5 Hearthguard.
Yeah, and they're more
definitely do more damage.
Do more damage, and they're more durable, and they can push forward better. That doesn't say very good things about the Cthonian Earthshakers.
Legitimate. It's not shaking my earth.
No.
All right. Yeeted. Goodbye.
Yeeted and deleted.
If there's one thing out of all the new models that I have so far, I have not built or painted a single Cthonian Earthshaker.
I just don't see these things coming into a list. Like at 110, man, like what are we doing?
Maybe against like a GSC, in a teams list, maybe you take 6 of them, you go into GSC or one of these bodies armies and you just have billion blast shots on annoying to kill platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how that would be. Fine.
You play against the Chaos Cult list and you're just like, brr.
I feel like you're already going.
Probably. But these things do it better than a lot of things.
They do, for sure.
Okay, next up we have the Hernkyn Yaegirs. Now, these guys are infiltrate unit, and they got a brand new transport to help them, the Kapricus Carrier, which lets them split up into 5 model units, which effectively means that you can get 2 45-point units if you pay 75 points to get that unit.
That's transformative for the unit, legitimately. The 10-mans are just so unwieldy. They can't really hide properly because there's 10 of them. They can't really use their reactive move properly because their unit size is so large. They still die immediately to the first thing that goes after them, whether they're in a 5-man or a 10-man. Like the 10-man just is super unwieldy. It's just annoying to use, right? It's just not really what you want.
And depending on which units you take, there's not as many relevant scout moves as there was previously. Previously, you were running, 2, 3 Sagitaurs that needed to scout, and then probably something like 9 to 12 bikes, the Pioneers that wanted to scout. And so infiltrate was a really critical rule to make sure your opponent couldn't block those scout moves. Now the infiltrate is nice, but you don't get yield points for no man's land until the second battle round, so standing on them early isn't as critical. They're still a good screen, but what they're really, really good at is with the carrier, the reactive move is a normal move. So if you stay relatively close to the carrier, you can be a screen, go out and do an action on an objective, you can stand there for your opponent's command phase to get yield points, the no man's land points, plus potentially hold more for those additional ones. And then they can threaten a reactive just back in, just like a lone op lieutenant or something like that, where your opponent has to do cleanse in the center or area denial. So they have to put something out there. And you're just like, cool, well, my resources going back in the transport, and they're going to get back out, contest the objective the next turn, throw a grenade or something, and do it all again. And I think that because we don't have as many Sagitaurs, don't have as many Warriors split up, this is replacing that package. And it does so in a manner where your opponent can either take a turn off from interacting with the center of the table, Votann-like, or they can interact with you and you get to keep your resource alive.
Yep.
Either one's totally fine with me. So I personally think the Jaegers are straight up auto take, and it's less because of the infiltrate to protect scout, and it's more because they are essentially a renewable resource if your opponent doesn't ever kill them.
Yep, and they're cheap. They're cheap. You can split them off.
Cheap.
If they were still 10-man squads, I don't think they'd be nearly as good. But the 5-man,
They'd probably be tournament carriers.
Yeah, with the Kapricus Carriers, man, making them 5-mans, they are now a ridiculous unit.
Sweet, I love it. So I've been testing that. I found 2 Kapricus with 2 10-man units of Jaegers. Really, really good. Yeah. Next up, we have the Hernkyn Pioneers. The bikes used to be one of the single best data sheets in the index. You often saw them in 6-model units, getting the Sustain 2 and trying to blow up opponents' units. They're one of the units that is severely diminished in terms of damage because of the lack of +1 to wound, and because the Pan-Spectral Scanner upgrade switched from Ignores Cover, and they're mostly AP1 weapons, to reroll 1s to hit. And reroll 1s to hit is very good. Their Rollbar Searchblade also became Ignore Hit mods instead of +1 hit against Stealth, so it became a lot more effective. But AP1 weapons that aren't ignoring cover unless you have hit them with a Thunderkyn unit doesn't do very much. And so and then there's a lot of other targets for Sustain 2 as a stratagem from other units now. I personally have been less inclined to run them. Their ability to go back into reserve is really nice. They're a 12-inch moving unit. They're fly. But if I'm already interacting with the center of the board with Jaegers that can get back into transports, I don't really need them to contest objectives. I have grenades from the Jaegers anyway. So realistically, it's getting into my opponent's backfield, and almost every good competitive list is able to screen their backfield with like 2 5-man units or 1 10-man unit and something else for pretty much the whole game. You're rarely ever getting into your opponent's backfield, and usually the backfield units are just not being sent forward. Maybe turn 5.
Yeah, when it like doesn't really matter that much. Also, the bikes can just drop in your opponent's backfield and probably not kill anything, because they're not going to drop on an objective. And by that point in the game, realistically, you're in Fortify Takeover. And so you just drop in, you drop 9 shots hitting on 4s at AP1. They're probably going to have cover.
Yep, cool. You hit the rotary cannon and some shotgun shots. It might kill a cultist unit.
It might not.
It might not, but it's certainly not going to kill like 5 intercessors or something like that.
No. And then at that point, like you've put them in your opponent's backfield and they're doing very little every turn.
You lost the 4 wound bodies as well, so they did go down in points. They did go down 10 points for 3, and that means I think ultimately that they're probably going to, in the Hernkyn detachment, they are automatic. You take them because you can get 4 reels to hit, 4 reels to wound. You can do all sorts of cool things with them there. But I think in most detachments, they're probably a solid choice. They're okay. I like them still as a rapid ingress, 12-inch move unit. It's OC2. They have grenades.
Yeah, there's a lot of upsides. They're not all downsides, for sure.
It's 80 points. You can do a big move block because they're big base models. I had a game that I played against Michael where they were just ignoring. They were really annoying to kill, and I kept having like 1 or 2 models left, and they kept just contesting an objective or being annoying. So they're more annoying to kill than your opponent would want. They're not about damage. They're more about the other utility aspects. So I don't think you run the 6-mans anymore. The 3-mans, though, you might run 1.
Yeah,
as a
see that. I can see that.
So I think they fit into solid choice for that role. Then we have the Kapricus Defender. This is the gun version where you can run either a 1-shot Magna weapon or you can run the 6-shot rotary cannon.
How many points are these things?
These are 70 points. They have a D6 fire and fade. So after they shoot, they can then move D6 inches. So they can peek out, shoot something, and then move out of that firing lane. They're a 12-inch moving fly unit that could be a great screen. It could go tie-up units. It's T7, 7 wounds. I have found them to be quite solid.
They got a lot of shots, or they have the Magna rails, which are quite scary to enemy vehicles.
Yep. You can run them in 2-man units in the Defender variant, so you could get a lot of these. They're very good in the Hernkyn detachment. Outside of that, you probably run solos because they can push back rapid ingresses really nicely, or they can pick off wounded units quite well. You can support them. You can shoot a Thunderkyn unit and then shoot one of these, and you're just picking up most like medium to cheap units quite easily because the rotary cannon on them is 2 damage instead of 1, which is quite nice and still sustained. I think these guys are quite solid, the Defenders.
Yeah, they seem good. They seem quite good.
I don't think they're going to be a tournament staple. Maybe in the Hernkyn detachment when you run max of them, and potentially they might replace land forts in some instances and you run 6 of them there. But I think the land fort is going to be a little bit better than them overall. But I think as solo guys, they're very solid.
To me, they feel fundamentally distinct from the other things in the solid choice tier. Like, I think Buri, I think like a lot of these are kind of overcosted or not that effective anymore. And I think the Kapricus Defender is actually low cost.
We can put in
very
example,
effective.
because what I have found is that we have a lot of units now and a lot of very good units, and they're all around the same points cost. Which ones do you take? I have found that it's probably difficult to fit all the things that you want, and the Defender was the first thing that I started dropping out, even though I like it.
Okay, so let's meet in the middle and put it right at the top. It's so cool.
Yeah, we can definitely put it at the top. I like them. I genuinely think they are a good unit. They're well priced. They're effective. They have a great rule. But they haven't been an all-star unit because they're not designed to be that.
Yeah.
So I found them one of the first things that I cut from a 2,300 point list.
Yeah.
I'm going to start cutting from them. But I think they are genuinely quite solid. And we'll reorder this in a second as well. Now the Kapricus, the Carrier, the transport version, I think is straight up auto take because of the combinations I was talking about with Jaegers. They enable the 5-man Jaeger units, and they enable getting back in with that reactive move. I think they're utterly fantastic for that role. They're also just a fast, cheap skirmisher unit. And even though they don't do much damage, it's just also another annoying body to kill.
Yeah, 165 essentially gets you 3 units that are semi-annoying to interact with and have some amount of damage. And for an army like this, that is perfect, right? You take 2 of those, you have 6 units that can do actions, hold random objectives, contest random objectives. Your opponent at some point is going to let a reactive move mean you get to use a unit twice, so you essentially have 7. And that's enough to play the game until as long as you need, right? You play the points part of the game, and then your opponent has to come forward, and then the rest of your list gets to fight. So for 330, you essentially have this like little boutique scoring package that takes objectives, defends objectives, and scores secondaries. And that's great. There's really nothing bad to say about that.
Yeah, I absolutely love them, and I think they're literally going to be in every list because they also have the 9-inch scout move, so they can get up into that nook where you can disembark, touch the center immediately, turn 1, 100% of the time on pretty much every board.
Seems good.
So 100% fantastic. Next up, we have the Sagitaur. So this was our primary transport previously, and it received significant datasheet changes. First of all, it lost its scout move, and that was a big part of its utility, was getting up into an area where you can deposit these cheap 5-man warrior units, because its main rule is that it split up warriors. You have a different competitive option now with the Kapricus Carrier and Jaegers being split up, which is 20 points cheaper. The Carrier is 75 points versus 95, and then Jaegers are 10 points cheaper than warriors. So you effectively save 30 points to get the same number of units, a bit less durability, but the added bonus of the reactive move that could mean you effectively have a whole additional unit in your list, and the scout move.
Scouts, they start in places that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And like 30 points isn't a ton, but to be quite honest with you, the difference between, if you have 2 packages, which is really what you want, if you have 2 packages, one's 60 points more than the other, and that's just too much, man. That's just a lot when you start to add it up. It doesn't scout. It's tougher, I guess. It does more damage, kind of, but really not worth the 30 extra points for that package over the very efficient Kapricus Jaeger package.
One of the things that was subtly powerful about the Sagitaur was it was OC3, which meant it out-OC'd any of the other mid-sized vehicles, which are pretty much OC2. It has now gone down to OC2, so it's very easy to contest an objective with one of these on it. And then for its damage output, which was another, it did damage, it got your warriors up, it used to have sustained D3 on its beam cannon, and that was the best weapon by far. It just completely lost that.
Weapon.
It still is the best weapon because you want to punch up into bigger targets, and it's still strain 12, AP3, and it gained D6 plus 1. But without the sustained, it ultimately, there's no rerolls that you're getting. There's no detachment that's reroll a hit, reroll a wound, where it would genuinely be quite solid there. It's just not doing very much damage at all. And the Kapricus doesn't even pretend to do damage. It's like, we have a couple autocannon shots. This is going to do basically nothing. But don't worry, you're not paying extra points for it. We're being cheap, and that's totally fine.
You're doing exactly what you want, and you can afford to buy the units that actually do damage, not overpay for a skirmish unit that pretends to do damage and does skirmish less good because of it. There's no reactive move on the guys inside. You don't scout 9, right? It does the skirmish game worse to try to do some damage and be tough, but it's not that tough, and it doesn't do that much damage.
Yeah.
Legitimately, it kind of does no damage. Also, this thing was like the single biggest beneficiary of the +1 to wound on the main laser gun, because you would, once you got a 6, you were like, all right, those are all wounding, because it's wounding on 2s, take a bunch of saves. And so you'd fire a bunch of these, and one of them would pop off, and your opponent would disappear.
Yeah. It was awesome.
You can't pop off anymore, and they're not +1 to wound. So they're just raw 3s into raw 3s if they're on an objective.
Your opponent ain't disappearing, trust me.
Your opponent ain't disappearing, and they are going to still die if they attempt to get in firefights. The Kapricus Carrier isn't getting in firefights with your opponent.
No, it doesn't need to. It's going to contest an objective, and it's going to relay your Hernkyn Yaegirs, and that's it. And that's all it does, and it tells you up front.
Yep.
The Sagitaur, on the other hand, is pretending to do other things. The other big change that it received was T10 to T9, and that is a huge breakpoint. Jack was talking all about the strength 10 weapons in the meta that have volume. You know, blow drones, forge fiends. They will just blow up a Sagitaur.
Does this thing still have 9 wounds?
Still has 9 wounds.
That is a horrible place to be into strength 10, because all the strength 10 guns are damage 3 right now in the meta. And so you have, now they wound you on 3s, and 3 of them go through and you're deceased.
It would have been honestly interesting. It goes down in toughness, but gained a wound to 10 wounds. That would have been pretty interesting. But honestly, it received a lot of straight up just downgrades, and it didn't gain very much. If the Kapricus Carrier didn't exist, I would think more highly of it, because you would still want to split warriors. But nowadays, I think you might take one to split one warrior squad, so you just get an extra resource out of that. But outside of that, I don't really see the reason to run very many of them. They're just not a damage unit, and you can't afford to spend 95 points on non-damage units when you already have
it inside too.
Exactly.
No, I'm not about this.
I think personally, they're between niche pick and solid choice. The niche pick is that you run one to split up warriors, and that's their role. And if that's very valuable to you, it's solid. If it's not, it's niche.
That does not sound very valuable to me.
Sounds
to be honest with me. Like,
because frankly, in the first game that I played with the new book, I ran the one Sagitaur to split up the warriors. You couldn't take the old Votann out of me. But now I've played multiple more games, and I just was like, I'm comfortable running 10 warriors. Like Jack was talking about.
0. Like, you can also run 0 warriors.
You could run 0, and you'd be totally fine with that. You could go triple Kapricus Carrier, triple Yaegirs, and just have billion cheap units.
Yeah, it's under 500 points.
Yep.
And it's 495, and you have 9 units that all skirmish very well.
And possibly more if they keep surviving.
Yeah.
So I think the Sagitaur is really struggling. They are very similar to Hearthguard in the sense that a new unit has appeared that dominates their role.
The best thing you can be in 40k is well suited to the role you're taking. Trying to do multiple things can be great if your cost reflects it and you're effective at multiple things. Flexibility is good. But when I take a skirmish unit that attempts to skirmish, I want them to do that job to the best of their abilities, and I want them to be cheap. And Kapricus plus Yaegirs does that perfectly. It has a variety of rules that are just good for skirmishing, and it's cheap as hell. Whereas taking a unit that is ineffective in a fight, overpaying for it, and then and also sacrificing a bunch of those rules that are useful for skirmish, and then saying, but it's flexible, I don't buy that, right? It does not do the job that it needs to in either of the areas, either of the arenas it's attempting to fight in.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot get in a firefight with anything, ever. Like, legitimately just anything.
No,
It'll lose that firefight. It cannot defend itself because it's a bunch of warriors inside a transport that does no damage. So, like, it can't defend itself against a unit trudging slowly up to it menacingly and killing it. It does not want to get in a firefight with anything, and it skirmishes worse than the Kapricus Yaegirs. There is no role it's suited for, and so by attempting to do 2 poorly, I don't want that. I'm not into that. If you do 2 solidly, great. If you do 2 poorly, not interested.
And let me just add one more thing in here, because one of the weapons did change, which is the Mater autocannon. Instead of the beam cannon, it gains sustained and assault, which is a much better profile. But if you look at the Kapricus Defender, you get a very similar profile, but you get a fire and fade.
Which is better. And
for
it's cheap.
25 points cheaper.
Yep.
It's tough. It's tough these days. I'd rather have less defense but not get shot, period, than have a bit more
or just be cheap so, like, if you do get shot, it doesn't pretend to live. Because, listen, man, this thing's dying to everything. It's so sad. It's so sad. The old Sagitaur.
The old Sagitaur.
The old Sagitaur.
But now we have Kapricus.
Its datasheet rules should legitimately be it rerolls a hit and a win.
Yeah.
Like a Lancer.
What it does is it allows you to advance and disembark, which is, I'm starting with my Infiltrate Jaegers anyway. I don't need this. I have scout moves on my Kapricus.
Who cares?
I don't need that.
Like, who actually cares that you can advance and disembark warriors? Warriors don't...
At least they have a weapon that advances and shoots now.
Anything.
But
I guess.
Land Fort. This is our last data sheet. It is our big honking tank. It is just as durable as it used to be, which is great. It still has access to Void Armor in Needguard, so it can be super annoying to deal with there. And then its weapon options changed pretty significantly. Like the Sagitaur, it lost the sustained D3 on the SP Heavy Conversion Beamer. Instead, it gained lethals, and it gained 2 additional shots, but stayed at the same profile. Its datasheet rule isn't supporting infantry that drops out of it. Instead, what it gains access to is the ability to ignore all hit and ballistic skill modifiers, which is quite valuable because it's pretty easy to have it hit on 3s, and then it rerolls 1s now instead of ignoring cover. So with its high strength, high AP weapons, the Memnyr Rail, it can be decent in a firefight, and it's pretty durable in return fire. You know, it doesn't really just outright die. You can heal it up with the Iron-Master. Its transport capacity changed quite significantly. It used to not be able to hold 6 Thunderkyn, and now it can hold 6 Thunderkyn and 6 Steeljacks, and it can also hold the Iron-Master because his ecogs don't take up any space. So you can actually just have a full character unit inside, and helps you stage those units as well. Its bolt cannons became sustained 2, and then the Mater autocannon became sustained 1, so it's a pretty solid Overwatch threat as well. The SP Heavy Conversion Beamer is best in the Needguard detachment, where you can give it sustained 2, and then you can, with its crit 4s from the conversion upgrade, you can every 4 up to hit will be 2 additional hits and a lethal hit. So it can do a lot of stuff that the conversion Thunderkyn unit can do. Otherwise, I think you probably run the heavy Memnyr Rail because it's our only real way to punch up at long range. It's 30 inches, which is still not super long range, but it's usually enough. And it's AP 4 plus D6 damage, dev wounds, and strength 18, which helps.
Yeah, it's kind of impressive, actually. I played against it. I was thinking, lol, 30-inch range, right? I had my Lancers and Repulsor.
You had 72-inch range.
72-inch range. And you know what? I couldn't stay out of the normal move plus 30-inch range. I just couldn't do it. Not without being completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, all right. 30-inch range, let's go.
So I personally have played them a few times. I think if you run one SP version, SP Heavy Conversion Beamer in Needguard to use the strat on, the sustain 2 on, that's a damn nasty activation, especially if Thunderkyn have stripped cover already. And it really does need that ability because AP2 without ignores cover just isn't that great. And then the Heavy Memnyr Rail, if you have 2 of them, they will chip down vehicles pretty consistently, and they can tank a good amount of damage. They also let you stage units. So they went up 15 points, which is not really the end of the world. I think they're going to end up being tournament stable because they are our best long-range firepower unit that can sit in a firing lane and actually survive.
Yeah, it can also poke out, clear the center objective, and your opponent looks at it and goes, well, I'm not going to kill that. I don't want to get in a firefight with that. I ain't going to do it. So you actually get to use your resources over and over again without your opponent just, it's not 1-for-1, right? You get to poke out, shoot, and your opponent then has to poke forward and get in a direct firefight with some land forts. That's tough, man. That's tough to win.
Ignoring mods is huge for them because there's smoke, stealth all over the meta. Not having to worry about that and pretty much always hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. That's actually, it's damn solid.
Yeah, they touch an objective and they're just going to be 3/0/1s.
And one thing that they have going for them is I mentioned Thunderkyn want to strip cover for them. That's why they're an auto take. But if we look at some of the other activations we have, I'm willing to put an 80-point unit out to strip cover for my big 240-point activation that's going to survive back in return and get something else to commit to that firing lane. For Sagitaurs that are going to do, we don't know what type of damage, I'm really not willing to throw the Thunderkyn out there, but I am willing for this. And because it can carry a conversion beamer unit, that's very helpful in Needguard or the Brandfast detachment. And of course, if we're talking about Brandfast, there's a very good stratagem for disembarking things. And you also get sustained by being near a transport. The Lane Fort does literally all of that to a T, and it has the strat to go through walls in that detachment as well. I think it is quite strong. I don't think it'll be an auto take, and that's mostly because You can run infantry heavy list to just abuse the -1 to wound from Fortified Takeover. I think that's the reason it won't be an auto take. I think you can actually play a list that doesn't necessarily have long range firepower and play infantry spam. Otherwise, I think it's our best quote unquote tank platform in terms of doing damage, because the Kapricus Carrier is a better tank for mission play. This is a better damage tank.
Yeah, for sure. And it's tough as hell, right? It's T12 in Need Guard. You can Armor of Contempt it, so it's a 2-up in cover Armor of Contempt. Very annoying to kill.
16 wounds.
16 wounds, yeah. It's tough as hell. 5 wounds, 5 OC on it as well. So, good tank, like solid tank. Yes, it went up. More reliable on the shooting.
Yep, I would say. You used to be able to swing from 0. You would swing from your thing is dead to I did almost no damage because you just didn't know what was going to happen. Now, it's much more consistent, especially when you add in the Thunderkyn activation.
For sure.
Which is great. I prefer that, frankly. It feels better to play. It's not, oops, I got 8 hits, +1 to wound, you're just dead, or I missed both my hit rolls. Cool, this activation is going to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, if you fire 2 shots and it's like a 1 and a 3, you essentially do no damage.
Yep.
Right?
And it happens all the time.
All the time, man. All the time. Playing into it and against it. Sometimes it is 8 hits and you just
evaporate.
But on the person playing with the land fort side, you need to be consistent in your damage. And at least this, if you fire the Magdarel, a 3 and a 1, guess what? You get to reroll the 1. You know, you get to ignore modifiers. You don't just hit on 4s. And then you have a bunch of other guns as well. So
I'm pretty happy with that overall. Now, if we look at the list here, we've got the most the most number of units in auto take, and I think those are all quite reasonable. If we're going to reorder them, I personally think that the Jaeger, I think the Thunderkyn are the most important unit in the army. They allow this army to function. And then Uthar, I don't want him to go anywhere. I think he's in every single list 100%. The Memnyr Strategist, there are reasons where you might not run him, so I would drop him down just a little bit. I think Steeljacks can also go right in front of the Memnyr Strategist, and I think the Kapricus and the Jaeger combination is...
So we're essentially considering them one unit?
One unit, basically, as a whole.
You never buy them separately. You definitely don't buy the Kapricus separate from the Jaegers.
You could have just one Jaeger unit, but I think the Kapricus brings such value to the army that you're going to bring it, just like the Sagitaur used to. I think I'm really happy with this organization, where Thunderkyn, Uthar, Jaeger plus the Kapricus, the Steeljacks, the combat version, and then the Memnyr Strategist, as he's our best enhancement caddy. That's good. Going into tournament staples, I think the land fort will be the most consistent thing to add, followed by Beserks.
Weirdly enough, I was not expecting that after the review, but they are very good.
They are really good, and frankly, I think they open up that if you don't want to run the combat Steeljacks, they're going to elevate up into that spot.
I just have such a good opinion of them once I realized that...
We played them on stream in the War. They did fantastic in that game.
They're just such a bear to deal with efficiently. You can't do it, basically.
I played them also with Need Guard. It wasn't just the Berserk detachment. I played them in Need Guard, and they open up that I'm going to go ahead and slam into this. I went into a fight first unit, which if I put Steeljacks into it, I would have lost some amount of models, maybe didn't kill them back in return. Instead, I went in, I'll fight on death with enough models that I will kill them in Fortified Takeover. And the Plague Brains did not kill a single Berserk. I just scammed on the 4-ups, and then I just walked in there and just beat them to death and took the objective.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even that crazy, right?
Yep.
Like, it really isn't, because they have to hit you, and they have to wound you, and then you feel no pain, you still get an armor save, and it's just rough.
So I think Land Fort, Berserks, the shooting version of the Steeljacks, and then the Warriors in Tournament Staple.
That all seems reasonable.
Solid choice. I definitely think the Kapricus Defender is the best out of them. And then I would probably rank Buri as the second best. And then I would probably put the Iron-Master after the Pioneers.
Yeah.
In niche pick, I think that out of all of these, the ability to split up Warriors, if you go for that route, is still probably the best thing in this section. And then I would probably put the Arkanyst Evaluator, especially in the Brandfast detachment. Having sustained on all of those guys, they can just drop out in your opponent. What you can effectively do is a play where you drop them out where they get in half range of your opponent's expansion objective. You're going to blow this up. You're strung back, so they're going to be lone opt, and then you have some sort of Jaeger screen to stop your opponent from getting within 12 of them. And that's actually a pretty darn solid battery. Then I would probably put the Einhyr Champion, because Charge Mortals is a very valuable thing, and he can have some good enhancements in the combat detachments. And then I would put the Grimnyr last. And then in the Disgrace section, Hearthguard definitely are the best out of these.
For sure. And the Kahl can... Dude, screw that guy.
Sorry, Kahl. Wow, he's so cool. But unfortunately, yeah, I think there's just no real reason. I'd rather run more Hearthguard if I'm going to run something. There's no reason to put him in Warriors whatsoever, unlike the Grimnyr.
I don't know what cost they'd have to make. Legitimately, probably less than the Memnyr Strategist. Memnyr Strategist.
40 points?
The Memnyr Strategist legitimately does more.
Yeah, manipulating yield points is a lot more valuable than what he does. He does do it if his unit kills stuff, but he has to lead Warriors or Hearthguard. And if he's leading Hearthguard, that starts to get a pricey unit. If he's leading Warriors, it's not guaranteed to kill stuff.
Even if you're running Hearthguard, you're not going to kill stuff.
So that's kind of how I would leave it. And I feel pretty happy about this. And we just recently, in the last 2 weeks, did tier lists for Black Templars and Grey Knights. And in those 2 books, there was a real dichotomy. There was auto takes and a couple tournament staples. There was basically nothing that was solid choice or niche pick, or very few units. And then there was a whole bunch of YGWY, which is traditionally the bottom row. Here, Ancestors Disgrace. This book is a lot more balanced. There's very few things that are complete or largely without a role, and then, or have it competed with significantly. There's a handful of niche picks, there's a good amount of solid choice in tournament staples, and there's a decent amount of auto takes, more than a lot of armies have. This feels like a pretty good internal balance for a first take, before any additional points and we've seen the army play.
The army seems really cool. I mean, I've talked about it before, I don't need to bang the drum a lot, but man, the detachments are really well written. Data sheets, after having played, after having seen them on the table, right? The data sheets are also very well written, with some exceptions.
There's a lot of synergy here. There's a lot of different roles that Votann have a lot more roles to pick from than they previously had, thanks to the new units. Some of them overlap with existing data sheets and sometimes surpass those, but we have more units to play with than before. Basically, everything in the first 3 rows you can see in any single list.
Also, there are like 8 new units. 6 of them are in the top 3 tiers. There are still some in niche and Ancestors Disgrace, just for anyone who's like, GW just makes the new data sheets broken. It's like, well, no, old units are still the 2 best data sheets in the book, 3 best, in fact.
Yep.
They're just evenly spread out, which helps really widen what this book can do, right? Because they also change. They provide a lot of like new roles. Right, there's the Kapricus, which is this middle of the road tank between infantry and tanks. Great thing to be able to purchase. The Steeljacks, which is like the iron backbone of your durability and your defense. You have a lone op, you have a couple different lone ops. It's super interesting.
And I'll say one thing about the Codex, having played more games, is that it's very easy to assume that this army isn't quite as durable as it used to be. In a variety of ways, and might not do as much damage. But I have found in the games that I've played that not only has Fortified Takeover really enhanced the durability of the army, the non-vehicle part of that army, you don't really need extra durability on a land fort, if that's the main tank you're running. And Kapricuses don't need defense, they're just cheap. So it's basically the rest of your army is -1 to wound.
That's crazy.
It's just really good if strength is greater, of course, which usually if they're putting scary weapons, it's going to be. And then the damage output, instead of being, I have to put a 200-point Berserk unit into you, I have to shoot 2 or 3 land forts at you, I have to suss to this bike unit,
I have to wait until you've killed something, I have to wait until you've killed 2 things, you have to be a unit I marked at the start of the game.
Exactly. Now, if your opponent wants to interact with the objectives and the Jaeger Kapricus combo forces them to have to do so, and even if they do, you can then potentially get those resources back, it's awesome. Even if they do, if they're not interacting with objectives, you're going to win the game 100% because of that combo. If they do interact with objectives, you're doing the better damage than for the most part. +1 to wound mattered on certain profiles, but we have a lot of volume and we have a lot of supporting profiles. The anti-monster vehicle 3+ helps a tremendous amount. I have not struggled to kill things in any of my games.
Yeah.
The Beamer unit's incredible. Land forts are really consistent. I have not struggled. I have not missed the +1 to wound.
You picked off my Repulsor Executioner like super easily.
Yep, with 2 activations.
It was a land fort shot it and 5 Berserks charged it and it died. And then
boom, it just evaporated.
It might have even died to the Berserks, to be clear.
I have not struggled with the +1 to wound. I see a lot of people bemoaning it. With the combination of the units we've had, I've had Berserks punching up, I've had the Steeljacks doing their thing, the Thunderkyn have been amazing. I felt very good. This is a really well-balanced army. It has, great damage output in a lot of different areas. It wants to support each other. It's not a one activation is just going to kill this thing out of nowhere. And our army wasn't like that before. It was very swingy with the sustained. I feel a lot happier with how the army has turned out with the Codex, and I'm really excited to keep playing different styles.
You know what this feels like to me? That you getting this book feels to me like World Eaters. World Eaters came out and they removed a bunch of stuff that World Eater players really liked, and they changed a bunch of stuff. And so World Eater players were like, we do less damage now, we're less dynamic, and they were bemoaning it.
Yeah.
And it turns out not only do you do a similar to, depending on the target, higher level of damage,
Yep.
but you move about as fast as you used to, and you have a lot more of a well-rounded game that you can play rather than just having the one style.
Mm-hmm.
And so this feels a lot like the World Eaters.
It really does. I think that was a great analogy.
Thank you. So I'm happy for you. I really am.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, the Delve Assault shit is gonna get me asking if I can borrow your models at some point. I promise.
Jack's gonna put in a shift every now and again.
Dude, that's for sure. You tell me I can run a 60 Berserks, I might do it.
Well, hopefully you're as excited about the Leagues of Votann Codex as we are. We already have 3 full games in the War Room with post games with different ideas. So if you want to check that out, head over to thewarroom.vhx.tv. There's that 3-day free trial. And in addition to that, you can check out the international Discord community where there's a Votann channel that's popping off, tons of discussion in there, a lot of new ideas. And because we have so much diversity in unit choices and in detachments, a lot of people are coming up with some very strange, off-the-wall ideas that I think are just going to work. There's a lot of cool stuff. There's depth in this book for an index that had basically no depth. This is a complete lease of life for Votann players, so hopefully you're as excited as we are. If you are joining us, if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know what you think about the book, what you're most excited for, what has been working for you in testing. We'd love to hear your opinions. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time. So long for now.
Bye-bye.